Bonjour.
Bonjour, Joe.
How's it going, man?
I'm doing good. The last days I has been traveling a lot, but by train, not like you, like by plane with jet lag and stuff, but by train. So a
Where have you
bit
been
tired,
traveling
but
to?
actually I was doing like the round trip between Paris and Berlin because I live in Berlin, but I go really often in Paris.
Mm.
I came for Christmas, and then I was doing like classes, but in another city which is called Rennes. It's like in Brittany, like so far west in France. So yeah, a lot of train to get there and stuff.
That's super cool. Yeah, it's interesting in Europe. I feel like a lot of people take trains. I've taken trains there too. It's super convenient. I wish America had the train system that Europe does, but
Yeah,
we don't.
yeah. Last time I was on YouTube and I watched a video about like a company in America trying like to renew the train and reborn it like. They did it like in Florida, I guess, and now they tried to do it like in California,
Mm.
and like to have high-speed train and stuff like this. But yeah, that's like I guess one of the biggest difference like between you guys and people that lives in Europe.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the landmass of the U.S. is pretty big too. So, and I think it was just made for freeways and driving. Plus, it's an American thing. We like to drive our cars everywhere. It's just like a sense of independence or something like that. I've heard that from a lot of Americans actually. Like, oh, I just love to drive my car because it's like so. So it's different, right? But I think
Yeah,
Europe's like super efficient in that way. You can get trains pretty awesome, and then you can take Ryanair if you wanted to really feel bad about yourself. Kidding. So yeah,
yeah.
but
Or is
anyway,
it jet?
oh yeah, you can just jet everywhere. But yeah. So I guess to back up, I'm sure the audience is like, what are you guys talking about? Welcome to my podcast. It's always like this. Yeah, I guess for people who don't know who you are, do you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah, let's go. So I'm Christophe Blefari. I'm a French data engineer. I've been working like in the data industry for the last 10 years. And for like 7 years, I was working like in companies. And the last 3 years, I've been doing freelance. And on my freelance free time, I would say, I do content creation. I have a weekly newsletter in which I do like content curation, like every week, trying to share the best articles I have found, like and read in the last few days. And it grew a lot. Like I started it like 2 years ago, and maybe 2 year and a half ago, and I have like almost 4,000 subscribers.
Nice.
And I get a lot of feedback from it, like people using it, find it all like useful. They use it to like curation and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
And on my data engineering time, what I did the most is like building stuff for analytics. To be honest, I did not do like a lot of stuff related to data science. Like I would say better, better, and like did a lot of stuff in analytics, like building warehouses, lakes, and stuff
Mm.
like to do reportings. Actually,
That's cool. Yeah, I subscribe to your newsletter. I think that I don't know if that's where you met. I think like a lot of people you met are probably on LinkedIn, but I subscribed to your newsletter pretty early, and I always like the content of it. Like, let's talk about that first. I think like I'm always fascinated by other content creators. Like, why do a newsletter? It's a lot of work. You sometimes feel like you're sending a newsletter out to the void.
yeah,
Why do you do it?
yeah. That's a great question because sometimes I'm a bit jealous, like about this podcast you have, like where you just turn on the mic and you just speak and you send it, and like it's 1 hour of time and you're good. Because when I do the newsletter, like it takes me 5 hours, 6 hours, depends,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like this. So the reason I started the newsletter was I was reading a lot of articles, and I had one issue, which one I was reading articles through the whole week, and so I wanted like to channel and to funnel like the my time and read it only at one point, like on Friday morning, and do not read like article like on Monday, Tuesday, because yeah, you lose focus when you do this.
Yep.
That was the first stuff. And the second stuff was like, so now I have a lot of articles that I read. I should save them somewhere. And so at first I started like to, having bookmarks and stuff. And I was like, why not starting a blog? Maybe like other people will like it. And that's how we started, actually, like just putting bullet points and links. And out of nowhere, 5 people I didn't knew like just subscribe without no advertisement and stuff. And I
That's
was
cool.
like, okay, why? And that's how I started, actually.
Why do you keep going though? It's a lot of work. Like I
don't
do
know.
a newsletter too, and I'm like, man, this is I guess I gotta get around to this once again and for the week, and it's fun, but could be doing other stuff.
Yeah, you're right. So I continue because, yeah, I like the process, like to select articles, try to having like an opinion on stuff, trying to train my written English and stuff like this, because yeah, I'm French, so it helps me like practice and speak better English, stuff like this. And now that like like the machine is on, I'm like, yeah, but people relies on me like to get articles, to get news and stuff like this. So I want to continue, but there is something I need to find, which is finding the right balance between sending every week like 20, 30 article and stuff like this, and sometimes having like smaller article that like give me time to breathe,
Yeah.
Like, chill articles, stuff like this, speaking about my life. That's what I did like 2 weeks ago, like when I did like the retrospective on 2023. It was like a longer article, but it was easier to write because it was just ideas out of my mind rather than like reading stuff, sorting the article out and stuff like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And you why do you continue? Why do you do it?
I just read a ton of articles every week, and I feel like at least a handful of them should be I guess I don't really care if people read them, but they're things that I'm interested in. And I suppose but at the end of the day, I'm making a newsletter for the people who maybe, I don't know, sort of like this content. Maybe they don't, maybe they do. I don't know. But it's more, I think, personal thing where I just feel like there's a lot of good stuff out there that people are writing, and I feel it more than ever too. We'll talk about generative AI in a bit, but in a world where it's super easy to make content, I feel like curation of really good content is going to be more important than even it used to be, right? I mean, I think newsletters have always had articles in them and good links, but I think more than ever, it's going to be more important to sort of bubble those to the top amidst a sea of just pretty bland stuff, really. I mean, you can already see it happening. I mean, you go to LinkedIn and it feels like half the posts are written by ChatGPT. So just not great, but
yeah,
it is what it is.
And when you create content, do you create like the content for yourself or for other people? Like, because I think it's like pretty pivotal, like this answer.
Yeah, I always do it for myself first, because if I'm not interested in the material, I'm gonna have a hard time writing it. Which is why, like, for example, I don't ghostwrite for people, right? I mean, people have asked countless times, "Hey, would you like to ghostwrite?" I'm like, absolutely not. Would you like to write a top article on this topic? I'm like, definitely not, because I only write stuff that I first find interesting, but then I think my audience will find interesting. But in order for you to create something, I think that you are going to be proud of, like, you have to inherently have interest in it, right? And so that's right. The big difference. Yeah. Otherwise, it feels like work. I mean, writing itself is hard enough as it is. That feels like a job, even if you're doing it because you want to do it. I mean, that's what I've been doing. I literally, before this, I was editing, part of my book, and I was like, this is where the work is, but that's enjoyable, right? Otherwise, yeah. So it's a difference. Yeah. It's an interesting one. So. And by the way, for the audience, Christophe and I both have podcasts, so we'll be asking each other a lot of questions. We're both it's a good mix. So yeah. But writing, it's an interesting one. I don't know. I always ask writers why they do stuff, and I think it's different if you are a journalist, say at like a publication or maybe a newspaper, if those even exist still, or whatever, then you have to write no matter what it is, right? And so you always have to balance it with that work ethic too, where it's like writing time is writing time, and it doesn't matter what else you should be doing. It's like this is what you're supposed to be doing. But I think just writing stuff that you're more excited about definitely makes the outcome better. So what do you think?
Yeah, I agree actually, and like in terms of like writing content, I would say my only inspiration up to that time has always been like the pragmatic engineer, like Gigerly.
Oh, great. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, like what he's doing is like this is so crazy, like what he built, and the pace he released, like so good content.
Oh yeah,
and stuff like this.
I think him and Ben Thompson from Stratechery are like the two gold standards for people who are out there, just writing really high quality articles almost every day, right? And Gregory and Ben are, I mean, that's their job. And the thing is, they make good money from it because you can tell that the content is really good. I mean, it's something people want to pay for. And like, to me, that's a litmus test. Are people willing to pay money for it? Like, I think that's a hurdle. Once you cross that, then, you've probably done something that, at least other people will value with their money and time. Most people will value it with their time, perhaps, if they read it. That's time investment on most people. But to invest the money is, I think, that's a different standard you have to cross. So
yeah, for sure. And as well, like, this is a question I already had, like, to myself, like, do I want to push forward like my writing content or all my stuff around my brand, I would say, between quotes. And I'm like, yeah, no way, actually. I want to continue like doing operational stuff. I want to have like the content as a side activity for the moment, because if I do content all the time, oh yeah, my work ethics will not be that good.
Well, yeah. Well, we were walking around Paris last month talking about this, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's for the audience. And Christophe and I hang out in Europe, I think in Berlin and now Paris. But we were walking around one evening talking about this, and it's that fine line where you have to, balance. If you're a practitioner who's now doing content, how much do you balance the practitioner part versus the content part? It's a balancing act for sure. If you become a full-on content creator, now you're not a practitioner. And the fear with that is you start losing touch with the very thing you're writing about. So that's it's hard. I don't know. How have you figured that out, though?
Right now, I'm still like, my newsletter time is like on Friday. Like every Friday, I do the writing stuff. I do the content stuff. Actually, I do like everything that is related to content and to building my brand. And the other days is like doing the rest, building network, working with my clients, and stuff like this. And the stuff that still keeps me away from like going all in on the content is that I still have not accepted any partnership or like advertisement or stuff like this.
Yeah.
I still refuse like people that wants to put like advertisement in the newsletter. And that's, I guess, the stuff that keeps me from the other side, actually. Because I don't get money from it. I'm still doing it like because I like it and not because I need it. And so, yeah, I think that's how it is right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, I had to post this on LinkedIn the other day too, because we get a lot of companies asking to be guests in our podcast.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah,
I saw a post. And it was just one of these things where I felt like it was very self-serving for the people asking, because it's a lot of marketing and PR departments of these companies or outsourced PR people looking for podcasters. But it's like, we don't charge for the shows. We don't have any sponsors. And so really it is, it's free, right? But I think the trade-off is you're not allowed to promote your stuff on there. And I felt like the moment we start letting people promote their stuff on our show, like it sort of destroys what made it, why people show up to it. And I can't have that, right? And so And advertising is a different one. It's an interesting one. Like then I started a new Substack, Practical Data Modeling, a bit ago, and I've had a lot of companies inquire about sponsorship, and I might take it actually because I think it for that audience it might work really well. But then you have to balance. Okay, so do you charge people for the newsletter, or do you just like leave it free and have it advertiser supported? But then what's the balance of that? So it's tricky because you want to balance. And the thing you want to probably keep in mind first is like it's really about the community that you're growing, right? For your newsletter, Christophe, it's like it's about your readers first. I mean, they keep coming back because you have good content. If you start throwing in this other variable of promotion, what does that do to it? And you have to be really careful.
So. And that's a tricky balance still because I meet a lot when I say a lot, I meet a few of like my readers like in real life, like whether like I meetups in Paris or Berlin. And each time I speak about like the ads and stuff like this, they are saying like, yeah, we don't care. Like put ads, gain money from it. And I'm like, yeah, but no. And yeah, that's super hard, especially when you do like written content. That's how do you know your audience actually? How do you know like what your audience like? Because like newsletter is like just sending an email, having people like subscribe like through a RSS feed, and you don't know like the audience. Like you just send stuff out, and you hope people read it.
Yeah, I think especially in the age of again generative AI, it's just going to be more important to really, I think, have the best content you can make. I mean, you'll make the money elsewhere. I mean, you freelance and stuff, and it's like you got to look at it through the holistic lens. Like I think you're one of the rare people I know, or one of the few people who take the long game, who aren't looking at it like, hey, how much money can I make off my newsletter today? Like that's because that has long-term consequences. It means now Christophe is sort of, I don't know, he'll take money for anything, right? And that's not I don't know, that's the look I mean, I know you good enough to know that I don't think that's the look you're going for. So, like that's how it is. Walk me through this though. I mean, you're a practitioner in data engineering. You've been doing freelance for a few years, and we were talking about this before the show started. But you had something on your mind in terms of data engineering's been changing. Lately, and what's been changing? What's on your mind?
So, I think there are like two parts. Like the data engineering might be changing. I think right now it's changing because a lot of companies like invested in analytics engineering in DBT or stuff like related to DBT, like trying like going more and adding more like data modeling to the stack. And so like I would say like the investment like in time and money has shifted away, and maybe as well because like companies becoming more mature, so you don't need that low level data engineering in a lot of companies, or maybe you still need it, but they are blind and they prefer like to do data modeling instead. That's one thing. And I guess the second thing that I've seen in the last 2 years is like the role of the data engineer that has shifted actually. And the one of the things that can illustrate it the most is that, so 2 years ago, like the analytics engineer role was not as precise as today, or as like in a lot of companies as today. And I guess like the analytics engineer took a lot of the job from the data engineer. And so a few of the data engineers, I guess, have been like, so if you put like the roles of data people like on a line, I would say like the data engineers are on the left because they move the data from A to B, and then on B like the analytics engineers are like doing stuff, and then from B to C, and C is like the BI tool where you have like the data analyst or like the business analyst and people that are using the data, so from left to right. And so before, when the analytics engineer was not here, it was only 3 roles, and since the analytics engineers entered the game, actually like it pushed like the data engineer through the left, close to the DevOps, close to the SRE, close to the infrastructure and stuff like this. And so I would say that right now, when you speak about data engineers, it's more about data platform engineers. And I guess like, I don't know if it's the future, but I think it's like going this way right now.
Seems like it. I think it's not what it used to be. What I mean by that is data engineering, I think, there's a lot more low level plumbing back in the day.
Yeah.
I mean, historically, it was more, I guess, a quote big data engineer. I think it's historically how you might want to look at data engineering, but since then it changed. So,
but when you say, for instance, like if you take like the example of big techs, and when you say like big data plumbing and stuff like this, actually, like the stuff the data engineer were doing was creating data pipelines for analytics purpose, like creating transformation with the data pipeline, which is now handed over like to the analytics engineer. You know, that's what I'm saying. Even if it like the data engineering stuff that they were doing was low level, it was for like an analytics purpose or for a business purpose. Right now, because of the analytics engineer, all this like business related stuff has been like stripped out from like the data engineer scope, I would say.
but is it a matter of like kind of like, is it a semantic question though? Because I always viewed analytics engineering as a part of data engineering, where data engineering might also be a bit more than analytics. Because you might also be, serving data for, event driven architectures or whatnot, which historically isn't part of the analytics, right? I don't know. What do you think? Like, I guess let's talk about analytics engineering. What is analytics engineering?
Good question. If I take like the market I know, which is like the French one mainly, at the moment, you can say that the analytics engineering is like people doing DBT. For like 80% of the the people that are analytics engineer, it's like writing SQL in DBT and maintaining and being the owner of the DBT project. I don't think it's a good idea like to define the role to like related to a technology, but I think it sums up like very well what is right now like the analytics engineering role. But if we go further than this, I guess like the analytics engineer role is like being the owner of the core data model of the data team, I would say. Like everything that is core to the business, or the core table or the super table, like LinkedIn people call it, but like what lies, I would say, in the silver layer, I would say, for instance, something like this.
Yeah, and for the audience, what he's referring to is a silver layer and a medallion architecture. So you'd have bronze, silver, and gold for various stages of raw to curated and useful data. Yeah, it's interesting. I kind of look at analytics engineering as, on one hand, I think it's kind of a nonsense title. Like it does. I'm curious why it was even invented, because it describes what a BI engineer used to do, or a BI developer, right? And so that was a job that's been around since at least the 1990s. Yeah, but data engineers also, I think, in some ways, a convenient title that fits today, but is always, I mean, the big data part used to be software engineering, because you didn't have the notion of a data engineer back in the day. And then you have analytics engineering, or the analytics part, that used to be the BI and ETL developers, or a DBA or a data architect even back in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. But then it kind of reminds me of what happened with data science, where that title meant something back in the day, and now it means something completely different now. And so I feel like it just titles sort of evolve as a function of a company's ability to write a job description to hire somebody with a title that will be attractive to them.
Yep.
So I mean, you wouldn't do a job you wouldn't do a job description today and say, we're going to hire for a BI an ETL developer, because that's not as cool as a data engineer or analytics engineer, even though it's just essentially the same thing. So
you're right.
I don't know. It's interesting, but where do you see the field of data engineering going, and analytics engineering? We'll accept those two terms as being what we described them as, but like, where do you see it all going?
So I think it's hard to answer the question, because so I've been doing like data engineering stuff since 2014, and I would say that for the last 10 years, I've done like almost the same stuff like every year with different technologies. I would say like it's still moving data from Excel, relational databases and stuff to somewhere else to do like to create tables and to create like transformation to do like visualization. But in the current state, and I've seen that for a lot of years, people struggle like to hire data engineers, especially in France, like because we have a lack of data engineers. So I would say organization adapted, and organization tried to either like find tool to remove the need of data engineers because it was super hard like to find data engineer to hire data engineers, either because like they were too expensive, either because there isn't. And so right now we are, if you take for instance Airbyte, like I would say one of the tagline at the start of Airbyte was like the idea of having like a tool that magically works to move data from A to B without the need of a data engineer. I guess you still need a data engineer because you need someone that can be the owner or can be responsible of the tool, and no one except a data engineer will will want to be like the owner of the Airbyte, for instance, or another tool like this. But still, companies doesn't want to have like data engineers because it's super hard like to find them. And so I guess like with the time going forward, maybe because of this we will see less data engineers because the struggle of finding them.
Interesting. Why do you think there's a shortage?
Good question. I guess one of the issues is that because data science is not super easy. I'm exaggerating.
Oh, it's way easy. I'm just kidding. No.
no. But what I was saying is like it's way easier to teach data science at school or at uni, because when you teach data science, it's like on project, it's more practical. It's like you can like in a few months going into a project from A to B and do stuff. When it comes to data engineering, it's way harder. This is something we already chatted about, I guess, when we were working. But like creating like the right material to in a lecture or in a class, teaching people to become data engineers is super hard, because to be a good data engineer, it requires two stuff. It requires you like to write code and to be good at like all the data engineering pipelining, infrastructure and stuff like this. But it requires you as well like to put stuff in production and to be able like to fix when something fails. And this is something that you cannot reproduce in classes, actually, like having pipelines that run in the cloud and that you will try to fix in 1 month, 2 months, stuff like this, like having stuff that continues on a few days, months, having people that wakes up like in the morning to fix stuff. This is something that you have in companies, but you cannot replicate like in classes and at uni, I would say.
It's hard to replicate for sure. It's something I've been thinking about I think data engineering, the concepts of data engineering need to be taught. I think you're absolutely right that the role of data engineering is hard to describe. It's sort of like teaching heart surgery. I've never been taught heart surgery actually, but I can imagine it's difficult. It's not something that you take a class on and you just go do. Requires a bit more. And I think that in some ways, data engineering is one of these jobs you get into after you've done something different. So maybe you've been a data scientist or an analyst and you want to work more upstream, and become a data engineer. Or maybe you're a software engineer and you want to work more in data. It seems like it's kind of a natural sort of middle ground there. It's an interesting one where I think I'm starting to see a lot of universities having at least data engineering classes. I haven't yet seen a data engineering degree, which is different than a class. I've guest lectured at several universities for their data engineering classes. And I think that's at least maybe a stepping stone to getting people interested in the field. And I've seen some people become data engineers as a result of that, but I'm very curious where it goes. I don't have an answer. Like, I'm working on a course right now, and it feels like on data engineering. I think the goal is to my goal is not to really teach you to become a data engineer, but more just how to think like one.
Yeah.
And I think what you're pointing out, pipelines break, production's messy. So having people recognize that, because I think the problem I have with how a lot of things are taught right now, say data pipelines in Spark or a class like that, is it's a lot of fill in the blank exercises with Spark or whatever tool.
Yep.
And when have you ever done that in the real world, where it's like, I'm just going to I'm starting from scratch, I'm doing a hello world with Spark. If you're hired as a new data engineer, you're typically going into a company and working on an existing platform. Like, you're not standing that up. I don't know who in their right mind would trust a brand new junior data engineer to stand up a brand new system. That to me sounds crazy. So you have to start somewhere.
And the Spark you will learn at school, you will do it like in a notebook, only like either like in interpreted way or stuff like this, like doing stuff with data frames, and it's not like, oh, it's deployed in companies. Actually, like, it's far away from like the way it's deployed in company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I'm also curious to see where data engineering goes. I mean, we read about this in the last chapter of the book, where I felt like even the title could eventually disappear at some point. That's what titles do. I'm not religiously attached to the title. I think the discipline is a different question. The practice of what a data engineer does is a different question. But every title changes. Maybe except if you're an accountant or a doctor. But I'm trying to think. Well, maybe not all titles change, but some do. So,
but personally, like since the beginning, I've always said that I'm a software engineer. Like, I'm a software engineer that happens to do like stuff in data. But
mm-hmm.
that I prefer like to define myself like this when I speak like to newcomers, because what I think I do is like writing code, like in a traditional tech way. But the code I write is like doing stuff with data teams and data people and visualizing data, transforming data and stuff like this. So I'm a software engineer, actually.
Yeah. How important is it, do you think, for a data engineer to be good at software engineering?
So I would say it depends. Like always, like the answer is it depends. But mainly, I would say it depends on companies or in the ecosystem you are in, actually. Because if we go back like to the semantics and stuff like this, for a long time, when you were looking at data engineers' role at Meta, for instance, like the data engineers at Meta were doing only SQL. So when like you are a data engineer and you do only SQL, we don't care about like all the software stuff and to be good at software and having like good architectural patterns and stuff like this, and doing clean code, even if clean is like a shitty term and it's like too subjective. But when you go like deeper and you are more like writing code, like either like in Python, or if a few of people are still like doing Scala or Java or stuff like this, I'm happy to have not like been in the Java world, but I think there are like still people in this world.
Oh, Java's everywhere, dude. I mean, let me just read the TIOBE index for right now. Let me just see. I know.
Python,
Python's number one still, right? C and C++ are 2 and 3, and then Java's 4. Java used to be. It's interesting in TIOBE. It used to have a double-digit lead. It was the biggest one. I remember 10 years ago, for example, Python was, I think it was like maybe as a top 10 language, but like at the bottom of the top 10. And I remember people were saying, if you want a fun toy to play with, do Python or Ruby, right? Because Python is more of a web development language back then. But if you want to make the money, if you want a real job, you're going to do Java, right? And so that was the mentality then. But Python, I mean, I watched this progression in real time, no pun intended, because I had a meetup that I started in 2013 on Python, and we started as a web development group, actually, right? I was like the lone data guy in there, and I was doing talks of machine learning, and it kept taking off to the point where, now it's literally the top language, but, I don't think anyone expected that to happen. But the whole point is, it's what I saw with these languages too is like a lot of the old big data tools were all written in some sort of a Java or JVM language, either Scala or Java, right? But increasingly, a lot of packages are, Python. I think if you want something more heavy duty, you're still going to go to Java, but now it's like Rust and Go or the other two, right, for more systems level stuff, because Python still kind of sucks at that. But it's interesting seeing how the tools have transformed. But I think like the role itself is still roughly the same, right? I mean,
you're right.
Software engineering hasn't changed. I don't think it's changed in the tools we use and maybe some of the practices, but inherently you're still writing code that needs to function in systems. Like that's sort of how that works. So it's interesting. So
yeah. And just to go back like to the question just before, like especially when, for instance, if I take the example of Airflow, if you are a good software engineer, I guess your pipeline in Airflow will be way better than if you are not. And the reason is like people did not realize it, but when you write stuff in Airflow, you write pipeline, it's like easy to write and stuff like this, but it's way too easy like to write shit, actually, like to write shitty code and to write like having like spaghetti code, having stuff that repeats, having like not good structure and stuff like this.
Oh yeah.
And that's, yeah, like Airflow is just a framework. And when you write pipeline in Airflow, it's better like if you are like a good software programmer, because yeah, you need like some factorization, you need some, yeah, because you repeat like every time, like you do pipeline, you move data from A to B, and from A to B, from like C to B, D to B, and so on. So yeah, you need to have good programming structure in your code.
Yeah, it helps. That's one thing too. I think that it should be taught better if we're talking about like teaching data engineers and engineers in general. It's just the art of writing good code. I know that, we'll get into this in a second, but Copilot's going to probably, people are just going to be copy pasting from that, or it'll just be generating code for you. And I mean, it's so different. It's some ways it's better and worse than I think in the old Stack Overflow days. And by old, I mean, that's what you did before Copilot, like a year and a half ago. But it gives you the opportunity, I think, to have code written for you, but you still got to know what good code looks like. And it's not just, does it look structurally correct, but are you doing things in the most performant way, given the tools you have and the problem you're trying to solve, right? So that's really, to me, that's what engineering is about, is like solving the problems in ways that provides a great outcome, in the most efficient, most optimally correct way possible that's not going to have any side effects. So whether you're using Copilot or not, I guess maybe it doesn't really matter at the end of the day, as long as you're still producing something. But I think that the art of writing code is going to change, though, right? And I think it is an art form to some extent. I think that's what I fear, is that the I don't know. Maybe I'm just too old. I don't understand.
No. Actually, I 100% agree. Actually, like, so for instance, like the Copilot name, like the semantic, like the name Copilot has been like wonderfully chosen, because that's how it should be. Like, it's something you are still like in the driver's seat, like as a software engineer or as a data engineer or as the people holding the keyboard, I would say.
Yep.
And so if you don't have like the foundational concept, the Copilot will not produce the correct stuff, will not produce the correct structure, you will not be efficient, like to find what you need. And it's not prompt engineering. Prompt engineering is totally, it's different. Like this way is more like you have IDs, you have like a computer, and you need to ask the computer like, and you need to translate the IDs you have like into the computer. If you don't have the initial IDs, like the copilot will not help you actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
You had an interesting thing we were talking about before we started, though, right? So it was you were some students,
yeah,
and I think you had some questions, and then walk the audience through this. It was fascinating.
So it's been so I've started like doing lecture at university since 2015.
Okay.
And so for 7 years, I've been teaching Python for data science at uni. It was like a Python basic courses, pandas, and scikit-learn. It was like a very beginner stuff. But this lecture, I've stopped it, and since and 3 years ago, I've started like a new class called Data Ops that I give
Cool.
at French engineering school. It's like a statistical school. It's like the best one in France. And this year, so it was like on Monday. So this week, actually, not this year. This week, I've done like 15 hours of the data ops classes, and I've noticed something that was super weird, which was the students were not asking a lot of questions. And when I compared it to like previous years, they were like less stuck into stupid stuff. Like when you teach at uni, like you have to to get used to it, but people will ask you why there is this issue, for instance in Python, and they will not like scroll to the bottom of the traceback. They will not find by themselves like the issues, even if it's like division by 0, even if it's like type error or stuff like this. When they have like an exception, they are not used to scroll to the bottom, find the error, stuff like this. And yeah, this year something was different. Like this week, actually, something was different. And I was like, on Monday, I was like, why is it different? I don't understand. And actually, I understood like on Wednesday, when I was like going into the class, like trying to help someone debug something. I've seen that people were using like ChatGPT, students were using ChatGPT. And so I asked them like, who is using ChatGPT? And the whole class said me. So I had like a class with 20 students, and everyone like everyone raised their hand like to say, I use ChatGPT. So now, rather than like asking me stuff, they ask to ChatGPT. And when ChatGPT is not performing, I guess they ask me in the end. Right now, I don't know yet how to think about it and what to think about it. But there is something like not good about it, I would say. Like my feeling is that feels not good.
What's not good about it? Why don't you like this?
Because what's the purpose of a teacher if you what's the purpose of having like an in-person teacher if you like if ChatGPT is that good that you still don't need them? So maybe there is an issue with my class, so I need to find something and to do stuff differently, like in my exercise, in the stuff I teach. But I need to renew myself maybe, and I guess that's maybe the answer. But
yeah,
there is a reason that people are going still to the university. There is a reason that even like there is bootcamp, there is stuff like remotely. There is a reason for the school system to still work like to having like in-person teachers, because when you are in person, like stuff go way faster than when you are like on your computer through internet and stuff like this. And so if still in classes where you are in person, people are using ChatGPT to learn stuff, I guess there is an issue somewhere.
Yeah, I'm struggling with this too. I feel like it's the inevitable. Well, it's reality today. Everyone's using ChatGPT for practically everything. People use it at work all the time for various things, whether or not they're supposed to. I think there's like I was speaking at a chief information officer roundtable the other day, and I jokingly called it a shadow AI now, because there's no notion of shadow IT that these leaders would have to tackle with, and now you got shadow AI that's people are using it, even if you have a policy in place, but you can't use it. You're like, yeah, that's cool. This makes my job easier. I'm going to use it. But then with students, right? I teach at uni as well, and it's and I teach other places too, and I'm trying to think of, okay, so if you live in a world where everyone's going to use ChatGPT, and you think you're very correct, Christophe, and that what's the point of a teacher under the old way of doing stuff, right? Because if you're just delivering a lecture and some homework and they can use ChatGPT for it, I mean, what's the value of that whole experience at the end of the day? Like, why do we do it? Why would people pay a lot of money to go to a university when they could do a boot camp online and use ChatGPT in pretty much the same way? I think it's a valid question. And I guess the way we teach might have to be done in a way that AI can't really do. I don't know. I think it's a question every educator is talking to. I mean, I speak to the deans and other people at universities, people who run universities, and it's a question they're still grappling with. I don't know that we have an answer. Would you tell your students not to use ChatGPT? Is that maybe one path you would take?
No, because the way I see ChatGPT and the way I see like students using it is like the same as like asking. There's two parts. Like, so I ask them as a following question, like, is ChatGPT your go-to when you have an issue, or is it still Google? As I say, like, no, it's ChatGPT. And when ChatGPT is wrong, they go to Google. So that's crazy to me, because like I was born in the Google era, and I started like programming like in the Google era, and so that's like the joke, like copy pasting from Stack Overflow, but actually it's not copy pasting from Stack Overflow. It's copy pasting from like Google search, and then you take the first answer on Google search and you put it in your code. Is it far away from ChatGPT? I would say yes and no. Like, in a sense, it's the same as ChatGPT, because you ask your computer something and you have an answer. But there's something different when you do it on Google. It's like you have a lot of answers, and you pick the one that you feel the most relevant. When you're in ChatGPT, you are in a one thread and
one answer.
And so in this sense, it's like totally different than searching in Google, and it blocks something which is the free mind, or just like having the creativity to think about your problem, to slightly draw like the solution in your head and asking the computer. With ChatGPT, like the computer is giving you like the most probable answer, and you stop thinking about it. And I guess that's the biggest issue. And so still, I will not like tell people like do not use ChatGPT, because it's stupid, I guess. But I need to find stuff and find exercise that cannot be fully answered by ChatGPT, and that ask them like to think about it, to find like solution by themselves, rather than just asking like the full stuff in ChatGPT.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, and I've been thinking about this a lot too. Where I think maybe it's part of me wants to encourage students to use ChatGPT, but you give them it's a real world problem now, right? It's not just how do you code this or that. I think that's pretty much a solved problem to a large extent. Like how would you write the code to solve this? Well, most people are saying, well, I'll just ask ChatGPT to write the code for me. But given a scenario, right? So I have a server over here. I can't access it. I'm getting this error message. Here's my setup. If you ask ChatGPT that, it might give you a few answers, but is that the right one? I mean, maybe using it for more kind of investigatory things to try and help you unblock yourself. Because I think a lot of the problems that we have in engineering are really getting past a lot of blocks and obstacles that we have, whether that's because of us or because of a team or some configuration issue for the cloud. I don't know, but it's think teaching is going to have to move more towards teaching people to reason about causal type questions. So like why and how, not necessarily like what, where or when type questions, because those will be to a large extent answered. So it's an interesting one for sure. I think for people like us, we feel like it's, on one hand, it feels awesome that you're going through this period in real time. Just like with Google, you mentioned that. I mean, that was a cool thing when it came out. That was awesome. It was it's better than everything else out there. But we're sort of reaching up that post-search age, and it's how do you teach? I remember teachers would say like you can't use Google, and we're like, yeah, that's nice. We'll use it anyway. I remember when it first came out. I remember my girlfriend, she showed me Google when I was in college. I was like, that's pretty dope. For using Yahoo or Alta Vista at the time. She showed me Google. I was like, that's cool.
In the system, there's something with Google that is totally different in ChatGPT, is that when you search on Google, it's deterministic. Like you put like a text, and probably if you put the same text like 1 year or 2 years ago, 2 years after, you will get maybe the same result. You will still get maybe the page you click on like 2 years ago, because like the link will be like deep purple rather than just blue. And you will still you will activate a memory, and you will activate something, and like a souvenir that you have, and stuff like this. The issue with ChatGPT is that this is not deterministic. Like you can ask like the same question, maybe it will not produce like the same code. And well, idempotent or deterministic, like maybe that's, I would say that both of the concepts that also are problematic, I guess, in this topic.
Mm-hmm. So when you talk to your students about ChatGPT, why do they use it? Did you ask them why they use it?
So yeah, that's when they said because like a teacher said we can use it.
A teacher said they could use it.
yeah, so they use it. That was like the when I said like when do you use it, they said like a teacher allowed us to use it, so we use it. And what they told me after this was so at the school I teach, in the previous year all the like exercises were like blank exercise, like they give you like a unfinished program and you have to finish it, or they give you like all the skeleton of your code, and then they say like you have to fill this function to make your program work and stuff like this. And the issue with this is that you just put this in ChatGPT, and ChatGPT will like ace it. Like it will be super good because you're giving him like a really good material to start with. So the teacher changed their strategy, and now they give like very open exercise with like 1 or 2 sentences. Mm-hmm. And so like the student are like totally lost. And so they need more ChatGPT because like the teacher is giving like a very open exercise, just like saying you have to do this without any guidance. And so like, I'm not sure it's better now because of this.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out, man. I don't know. It's what I find interesting as an educator is that the world has changed. The world changed this quickly.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, GPT had been out for a long time actually, but you throw a form in front of it and suddenly everyone's using it. And remember, even like the beginning of last year, 2023, people, teachers were freaking out about it, and some are, I think, becoming flexible in using it. And I know even in my kids' classes, they all use it. Come home and you Bard or ChatGPT. I mean, we have I have the kids use Bard because it's like I don't want to pay for an extra subscription, but it's like use ChatGPT 3.5, I guess. But it's reality though.
3.5, like the one not verified.
It's pretty good though for code generation and everything else. So I don't know. I think it's just how it's gonna be, man. I mean, it's more how are people like us going to adapt? And I think the content and the education part, I don't know. I mean, I'm trying that with my new book right now. Like I'm launching a lot of it on Substack because I feel like maybe that's an alternative. Maybe it might be better to grow an audience there and grow a community and see how that flourishes versus just launching another book to the world. And because
I've seen your Substack. Like, did you get like feedbacks from like the question you openly?
Oh yeah, getting it right now. I'm still it's still coming through my feed. Like so for the audience, practical data modeling came out a bit ago. It's been getting a lot of good response. Like just a lot of questions and a lot of people just debating with each other, which I think is awesome. So that's
cool.
Super cool to see. Yeah, but to me, that's the essence of what this whole world's going to be about going forward. Is like generative AI can generate content, but it's going to be really hard to, I think, replicate that discourse with people and experts, right? And that's really what you're trying to drive out, even with a book, is the ideas should spark conversation and debate, and hopefully challenge your own thinking as you write the book. And I feel like, because I know what you said at the beginning before we recorded, like when you saw your students using ChatGPT, like it seemed like a part of you died in a way, because you saw this and you're just like, what's going on here?
Yeah. I agree. Actually, like I was like, I don't understand why people are so silent, because it changed like as well, like physically in the room. Actually, like people were so silent. They were like just
really,
like they are not speaking loud. In the year before, they were like raising hand, like speaking loudly and stuff. And this year, I don't know if it's just because of ChatGPT, but something like physically in the room was totally different than the previous year.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and it was so weird to me. Like the first day I was like, yeah, they are just sleepy. Actually, that's because it's the morning. They are sleepy. I need to wake them up. But yeah, the next day was the same. But actually, as well, like my course is super hard because it's like the data ops one, and I'm trying to teach them like the concept of putting data stuff in production, which is completely new to them. Like they have seen Docker, but they have seen Docker locally, and so I'm trying like to teach them like the cloud. And when you're in the cloud, you have issues like every time, and you jump from issues to issues to issues to issues, and at the end you're like super tired. And yeah, I guess as well is like maybe it hit them in the face and they were saying because of this. But I guess ChatGPT has
I mean, it might be worth just having the students, if you're in person, just have people shut their laptops and leave their phones in maybe a basket at the door or something, and then we can just have a conversation about the problems we're trying to learn about. Maybe that's something that comes to mind if you're doing it in person. If you're doing virtual, forget about it. Like people are going to have ChatGPT open, but in person might lend itself really well to that experience. I don't know. Try it out.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe that there is something that can be replicated from like companies, like having some kind of pair programming, but in a class, like one person is going like to the whiteboard with a computer, sharing the screen, and the whole class is like funneling like all the ideas to the person on the computer, like the whiteboard.
That's really good. Because that's really what you'd be doing in the real world anyway, is just getting up there, troubleshooting problems as a team. And I think that's also one of the skills when you talk about, engineers coming out of school. One of the things that they really lack is that sense of group dynamics and group problem solving, right? And
you're right.
That's awesome, Christophe. Yeah, there you go. Feels like that's where it's all heading, though. Like which is kind of funny because it's going back to basically the 1800s. So
yeah, you're right.
But that's awesome. Cool. It's been good chatting with you as always. I'll let you know next time I'm in Europe. Go hang out again. But I guess for people who want to learn more about you and what you're about, how can they do that?
So people can find me like on my website /blog. It's blef.fr, or on my LinkedIn, Christophe Blefari. And yeah, that's mainly where I'm active and where I do stuff. Like,
cool, awesome, good newsletter. Go check it out, everybody. So,
thank you.
Awesome, man. Yeah, it's good to see you again. So,
good to see you too. Thank you so much for the invitation. Yeah. It was
Anytime, man.
super.
Anytime. Oh, it's just fun. We spend a lot of time just walking around wherever we are. So
Yeah. Each time I help you visit a city, like next time maybe we do it like in in Rome. I don't know.
That'd be dope. So, yeah, awesome. All right, thanks. See you, Christophe. Au revoir.
See you, Joe. Bye.